Bandwidth for First Updates Now is supported by AndyMark. Are you competition ready? Go to andymark.com and keep your team inspired. And by the Blue Alliance. Keep up to date on all live and archived First Robotics events and team stats at thebluealliance.com. First Updates Now is brought to you by viewers like you. Fun relies on the generous support of our fans in order to continue to keep creating content. Please consider donating, giving bits, or subscribing. Subscribe for a few bucks a month or for free through Twitch Prime. And don't forget that our subscribers get 5x chance to win on all giveaways.
All right, good evening, fun fans, and welcome to Any Way You Want It, where we'll be recapping both Long Island events this week and the New England District Championship that I know you've all been waiting for. We'll also discuss alliance selection strategies and reveal the final top 10 list for the Northeast in the 2018 Power Up season. Reporting for First Updates Now, I'm Garrison Hefter.
I'm Audrey.
And I'm Sam. And moving into Long Island 1, last week on Recap, Audrey mentioned that SPPLI 1 was basically just 469 and 3646. So although 4069 looked a little shaky in my opinion through quals, this is essentially how the event went after the clear favorite 3646 Integra used their first pick to put them in their alliance. Although the 1 and 2 seed ended up meeting in the finals, the number 3 alliance and the number 4 alliance were both upset in quarterfinals, which is pretty rare for this year. The number 2 alliance was also taken to 3 matches, showing in my opinion just how shallow the field of this event really was. The finals were pretty uninteresting, with the number 1 alliance winning both matches by a definitive margin, but there was some nice scale play from 533, which at least gave the number 2 alliance a chance. That said, unsurprisingly, Team 469 and 3646 ended up winning the event with the help of 2234 alternating current from Pennsylvania, meaning that all 3 teams from the event were outside of Long Island, and even outside of New York. Ending off the first SPPLI event, Team 2869, the Regal Eagles, claimed the EI Award, and Team 5016, Huntington Robotics, won the Chairman's Award, which, fun fact, is actually the same 2 teams who won those awards at Long Island last year, just swapped around.
All right, so although the SPPLI 2 lacked the firepower and big names of the district championships also going on this week, New York's last regional of the 2018 season really showcased Long Island's ability to step up to the challenge of Power Up. 1796, let's start with them, Robo Tigers, consistent, well-practiced, and finally getting the recognition they deserve. 3015, Ranger Robotics, and 3171 also brought their A game, playing the scale really well, doing their autos, and aided by the power of Team 870 Rice with their 2-cube switch auto. And fun fact, 870 and 3171 also played together at Greater Pittsburgh. Coming in also was Team 369, having a cool auto, 1 cube, and it was actually a lot for this regional. Even with this cool auto crew, it would be 1796 and 3015 that ended up dominating not only the rankings, but eliminations as the Robo Tigers picked Ranger to the first seed, along with Team 810, the Smithtown Mechanical Bulls. The closest margin a team ever pulled was still over 100 points, and that match was the match where 3015 rather spectacularly failed their auto, as you can see here. But I'd like to highlight the opposite side of the bracket, as that's where we saw some of the closer high-level match play at the entire regional. Semifinal matches were quite the show, with second seed 870 Rice, 3171 Hurricane Robotics, and 1468 Hicksville Jaybirds attacking the scale in auto, teleop, and the endgame. 1468, such a great snag for the second seed, complementing the alliance with their switch and auto and great vault play. They would face off against the power of the third seed with teams 263 Sachem Aftershock, 287 Floyds, and 4458 Infernobotics. Right from out of auto, the Red Alliance would take the scale with auto advantage, but that would not stop Blue from coming back, almost overtaking their lead at the last second. Each alliance would stay within 1 cube of the other, the entire semifinal series, but it would be the second seed, Red Alliance, that came out on top. And so we entered finals. If there was anything to take away from this final series, is that it was all the teams in finals had already played at an event, as opposed to the 14 coming into Long Island 2 that only had 1 event. None of those 1-event teams would qualify from champs, and even taking an even bigger step back, 53% of the 172 New York teams all season only had 1 event. And of those, only 6 qualified for champs. This just highlights the fact that more events in New York, more New York teams are going to be able to play, and the more competitive our region will be. Finals started out with a beautifully timed execution of 1796 and 3015, going for the scale in auto, and continued with some of the highest numbers of cubes on the scale that we saw at regional. In the end, though, it would be 1796 that took their fourth blue banner of the season, 3015 that took their second, and 810 that would go on to their third. Luckily for the Finals Alliance, that generated enough wild cards to send the entire finals to champs. So congrats to them. We'll see you in Detroit. Speaking of 810, the Smithtown Mechanical Bulls, congratulations go out to them on their triple Long Island banner, winning Chairman's Woody Flowers and the regional.
All right, buckle in, folks. It's time for the New England District Championship recap, and this is a long one. A lot of stuff happened in Boston this weekend, so let's get started. We had 64 teams coming into Agganis Arena this weekend. Starting qualifications, it seemed like pretty much every match was exciting. I talked a lot last week about how deep the field was, especially with very good scale bots. And I think one of the most indicative stats of this is the winner's scale percent ownership, and especially in auto, about 22.5% average. This season was only about 7.5% average. So this is a huge leap. And this was contrasted by the fact, if you look at winners' percentage of denying their opponent switch in quals is about 10% lower than the season average. And in playoffs, it's about half of the season average. So at the end of quals, there were a few surprises in the rankings. Let's talk through a couple of those. And I'll start with some of the teams that fell a little bit lower than we expected, starting with 88 TJ Squared. Successful early season, won their first two events, week 1 and 2, if y'all remember. Added a new arm right before Boston, week 6, I believe, on their elevator. They really struggled to find their groove again after that. Looked like they might be getting it back. And then, they really struggled, though, the whole tournament. They ended up in the 44th spot, but got picked up by the 5th captain, 56-87, the Outliers. And then there were some other struggles, 558 Elm City Robo Squad, 238 the Crusaders, and 2168 Aluminum Falcons, all ranked around the 30s, along with Mechanical Mayhem, 1519, and 78 Airstrike. And all of those teams were picked for elimination. So a lot of really dropping down in the rankings for these scale bots. And then there were some surprising higher seeds, maybe that you wouldn't have expected to seed quite so high. 32-36 Triforce, a very good scale bot seeding high. And then 2 low bots took the 7th and 8th seed, respectively, with 2170 Titanium Tomahawks and 4557 the Full Metal Falcons. And this sort of shook up the whole bracket a little bit. Now, let's talk about things that weren't surprising. And I think it shouldn't really surprise anybody that 195 was really close to perfect. It took until Saturday morning to knock off 195's perfect ranking score, and it took the 3 best robots in the tournament to do it. You had 125, 230, and 133 all on an alliance together in a qualification match. Which is insane. And it was still pretty close. About 10 matches left in the morning. 195 was never really going to lose the number 1 spot. Went ahead and picked 319 Big Bad Bob with the first overall selection. I had a bunch of teams that I talked to over this weekend, but 195 and 319 were some of the most fun. I asked both of these teams, especially 319, if qualifying for champs, because they qualified in New York week 1, I asked them if that changed their mentality, and they kind of laughed it off and said, well, they were more relaxed, but they really wanted to win the tournament. And one of the quotes I liked was, I think it was the driver said, well, we've never been this good before. And the whole team has really bought in. For example, they added the forklift buddy climb on the back of their robot. They started designing that on Saturday. It went on their robot, at the tournament. They loaded it into the trailer while it was still hot from the welder. Great work from them leading up into the tournament. Incredible story. But anyway, that left the 3rd seed, Team 177, the Bobcats, teaming up with longtime friends and number buddies, Team 176, Aces High. 133, Burt then selected the Hometown Heroes. 125, the Neutrons. The 4 seed captain, 175, Buzz Robotics, picked the Gale Hawks. And then the draft stopped making sense to me. There were a lot of very strange picks, I would say. Some teams that fell a little further than they should. A couple of teams that didn't get picked that I thought that should. There are only 3 teams in the eliminations with low bots at all. 2 of them were captains, 2170 and 4557. And then 5846, the South Coast Corsairs, were picked as the 24th and final pick of the draft. So moving into elims a little bit. The number 1 seed actually had their closest match in the quarterfinals. And I'm not going to talk about it too much right now. I'm actually going to talk about it a little bit more tomorrow night on Funalysis. But other than that, there were no upsets in the quarters. I mean, that match wasn't even upset. And then once we got to the semifinals, the 2-3 matchup, I think, was really what I want to highlight. It was fantastic. You had 125, the Neutrons, 238, the Crusaders, and 133, Burt. But 238 was broken. I think they broke in the quarterfinals. Their gripper really suffered some damage, and they couldn't control a cube for the whole semifinals. And they ended up resorting to trying to slow down the Bobcats. I know it's easy to say in hindsight. I'm a little surprised they didn't call in a backup. 238 went out 3 straight matches, couldn't hold on to a cube. I would have liked to see them switch it up a little bit, but again, it's in hindsight. This is all happening really quickly. It's the semifinals. You don't really want to take yourself out. The finals, once we got there, it was the 1 seed versus the 2 seed. And they ended up being much sloppier than I expected. If you go and watch the match video, in finals 1 alone, there were at least 13 cubes dropped or knocked off the scale. Auto ended up being a pretty big difference maker, as it has been all season long. And the 3-cube scale auto from 195 really packed a punch. Even if they did miss one, which they did a lot, especially in the playoffs. In that one qualification match I mentioned earlier that they lost, 195 missed their scale auto, and after that they tried to recalibrate it for a losing scale, and they never quite got it right, and they generally missed 1 or 2 of their cubes, and this actually made some matches closer than they should have been. But in reality, they were never that close to losing any of their matches. 195 and 319 were so dominant this tournament, and they ended up winning the tournament. I mean, as the scales, as the stacks get really, really high, the advantage goes to that number 1 seed because they were so much more practiced at putting cubes onto those high stacks. So again, I want to say congratulations to the 2018 New England District Championships. 195, the Cyber Knights, and this is their 4th straight New England District Championship on 5 tries. The only one they lost was the first one, as well as 319, Big Bad Bob, and 58-46, the South Coast Corsairs on their first New England District Championship. And I also want to give a huge shout out to the Chairman's Award winners at the tournament: 78 Airstrike, Team 467, the Colonials, 59-62 Persevere, and 125 the Neutrons. Good luck to all the teams moving on to Detroit.
All right. Yeah, great event there. So let's move on to our discussion topic for the night. What are alliances looking for in a third robot? What are the merits of taking a scale robot versus a switch robot versus maybe even a defensive robot?
Okay. Hey, I'm back. So maybe. I don't know. I might be stuck. Okay, cool. So a lot of the alliances in Boston, I think, could have really benefited from picking a switch bot as their 3rd pick. I mentioned that a lot of the picks didn't make sense to me. And I think a lot of it was the order the teams were picked in, but a lot of it was I didn't understand the 3rd switch bot, the 3rd scale bot for some of these alliances, when a team like 6329, Buck's Wrath, for example, would have been much more valuable pick, especially for the strategies that these teams were trying to run. The 3rd robot often didn't touch the scale, which begs the question why you would pick a scale robot when a switch robot in that position is going to be better for your strategy. I understand the idea of having a backup on the scale in case one of you breaks, or you're going to need that, or maybe you just want the auto. But I was surprised that only 3 of the robots in New England champs, at least, were low bots at all. I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys see, because I only really watched one tournament this weekend. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think the 3rd robot at champs will probably mostly be switch bots. I think it should mostly be switch bots. Although in terms of the 3rd pick for the alliance, I could see a lot of teams looking for a true backup just in case one of their good scale bots break. Just because a scale bot can generally play the switch at least fairly decently, but that doesn't work inversely. The switch bot really can't play the scale. So I think we'll see a lot of 3rd picks be switch or scale bots rather, and 3rd robots rather be switch bots.
So I think there is a little bit of merit to taking a scale robot from a lower seed, and that's useful at the beginning of the match. Having a 3rd robot that's capable of putting 1, maybe 2 cubes on at the beginning of the match gets you that much ahead at the beginning, and maybe turns the scale in your favor if you're 1 or 2 cubes ahead the entire match, if you're basically even with your first 2 robots. However, if you're a higher seed and you've got that auto that puts you ahead within the first 30 seconds of the match, you probably don't need to try for that riskier strategy. You go for that stellar switch robot and you run some pretty cool everybot cycles from the other side of the field, make them take care of their switch, just make them occupied with whatever isn't the scale. Something like that.
Yeah. So one of the stats I found is so winning alliances, their winning switch ownership percentage was around 93 to 95% average. So if you're winning a match, generally you own your switch for over 90% of the time. And I think that's kind of twofold. One is, winning alliances are just going to hold their switch better. But I think if you can bring that number down with a robot that attacks the other switch, it drastically increases your chances of winning a match, which isn't surprising. That sounds stupid kind of coming out in words, that, scoring points is going to help you win a match. But I think a lot of people really ignore the other switch for some reason. And I saw that a lot at New England this weekend, when it would have been a significantly more economical move cube-wise to go for that switch, especially early in the match. Mm-hmm. That's just my 2 cents. Alrighty. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the top 25. So each week we've shown you the top 10 of the region as a preview for the top 25 show on Tuesday nights. And so far, only the teams that competed each week were eligible for voting. But tonight's poll is a little bit different. This is the poll for the entire season. So all teams were eligible for voting, and this is your official top 10 for the Northeast of the 2018 Power Up season. So taking the number 1 overall spot, the best robot in the Northeast for 2018 is 195, the Cyber Knights. This really shouldn't be that much of a surprise. At the number 2 spot, a little more surprising, Team 125, the Neutrons. In third, we have Team 2590, Nemesis, our first MAR team on the list, followed by another MAR team, 225 Tech Fire. At 5 is 319, Big Bad Bob. In the 6th spot is 25, Raider Robotics. And 7 is 133, Bert. 8 is 177, the Bobcats. 9 is 340, GRR. And at the 10th spot, we have 1796, the Robo Tigers. So congratulations to all those teams for making our top 10 list. And I want to highlight how close some of these are. Like, some of these teams are separated by like 1 ranking in the overall voting, especially in that 2, 3, 4, 5 range. Some great robots on these lists. So, tell me about some of these teams. Tell me about some that you thought should be on the list. I'm curious to hear what y'all have to think.
Yeah, so a team that I was really disappointed wasn't on the list was 694 Stiples. They've progressively gotten better throughout the season, going from semis to finals and finally winning their last event. I really think that with that practice and, some of the iterations they've made on their robot, they could do some real damage to champs and hopefully recreate 2016 and make it back to Einstein. Looking back at the top 10, on the other hand, I really think the one that surprised me the most, and you're going to laugh at me because they're in the number 3 spot, is 2590 Nemesis, because I just really think that they put on such a show this season, and I really think they are the best robot in the Northeast.
All right, so my vote for upstate New York, championships upstate New York, going to be great. With 46 teams qualified from New York alone, there are certainly going to be some standout teams really going to bring their best game. And maybe, make it to Einstein while they're at it. So let's start with double banner. First Alliance Cursebreaker, Team 340, GRR, according to Garrison, and GRR for the rest of New York. They're basically New York's embodiment of the 319 mantra, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You see them up there on our top 10 as the highest ranked non-district team, and that's nothing to sneeze at. 340 has great auto mode, stellar placement, and really everything else to back it up. Second up, don't worry, we're all wondering where 2791 Shaker Robotics is going to be ranked. After a double finals appearance this year with 1 win, 1 finalist, 2791 looking to go all the way at this year's championship event. With their awesome ramps, solid autos, and again, really smooth placements, 2791 has really broken out into the FRC community this year. I certainly wouldn't call it a breakout year. They've been building high caliber robots for a while now, but this has really been the year where they're starting to be recognized for it, and I think that's fantastic. Other honorable mentions, 52, 54, 20, and if there's really anything I know about 20, it's that they'll improve tenfold between their last regional and champs, and we'll see if they can climb the ranks to success at this champs this year. And finally, we've got sort of a dark horse here, if you can even call them that after winning the New York Tech Valley Regional. 1493, a team you don't see on here very often. The Falcons, such a great switch robot. team built right to their resources, great 2-cube auto, and would be such a good third robot on any kind of Champs Alliance.
All right, yeah, I mean, 195, 319, you can see them up there getting plenty of credit. 177 even on that list. I would like to see 176 Aces high on the list. They have both those teams. It's been a while since we've seen them this good, and I'm really excited to see them back. 133 Burt, one of the best robots consistently this year. 78 Airstrike is one I'm a little surprised it's not on the list. They were on that number 2 alliance. They really, really dominated at both their early tournaments. They had a stumble at Rhode Island when they put in their backup driver, and I think that might have a little bit to do with it. They didn't show that consistency that some of the top teams did, but I mean, they really pulled it out at district championships, ending up on that number 2 alliance with that over the back score that they really hadn't pulled out that much that season, but it was really, really cool. But I'm expecting a lot of New England teams to do really well at champs this year. I think it might be the year 177 finally returns to Einstein. 125 was on Einstein last year, division finals in 2015. Seems like they're always getting better going to this final event. 195 was division finalist in 2015 as well. 2016, they finally got to Einstein. Last year, they lost to the Outliers and the Neutrons in division finals. There's a lot of great New England teams that have been on that Einstein level for a long time, and I think they're going to be well represented on that final field in Detroit this year. So if anybody else has any questions, I think that just about covers it for us tonight. Thank you for everyone that's watched. If you want any more First in your life, First Robotics, and you like what we do, we ask that you share the show with your teammates and friends. We really like watching First Updates Now Nation grow. Remember, we don't get paid for this. This is all based on your donations and support. We really just want y'all to like what we do. You can always support the channel by liking our social media accounts and following the stream. Or if you'd like to subscribe and more directly support our content creation, you can do so right here on Twitch. There's also the special right now. If you're a Twitch Prime through First Updates Now, you can get a discount on some bits for like 99 cents. It's a really good deal. Throw those our way. That'd be awesome. And yeah, if you're a Prime subscriber, yeah, that's right there. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe, like us on Twitch, join the Discord. All this social media really helps us get our word out here. And on behalf of myself, Audrey, and Sam, our producer Tyler in the background, I'd like to thank you for tuning in tonight. Our next show is Intimidation, starting in just about 10 minutes. Don't forget about the Top 25 show tomorrow night at 9, and Funalysis before that tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We'll see you next week on Any Way You Want It. Have a good evening, everybody.